Hi, I'm John, and welcome to Edgetone Studios. And today is the day that you've been waiting for, the 2024 Edgetone Studios tour. So let's get to it. Okay, it's been 2 years since I did a studio tour, and at that point in time, I just built this space. I didn't know what I was doing yet. Well, I knew what I was doing, but I didn't know where I was going with things, and I still sort of don't. But I've made some new gear choices. I've set up a little bit differently, and I've got a few new things in the works. And one of those things is trying to get better with professional video. So I've got a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Pro 4K camera, and my goal is to start filming using this camera exclusively for things that aren't webcamable. So this is my webcam. It had to be my webcam because that's my only other camera right now, so I couldn't film that camera with itself. However, in a few days I'll have two more, and I'll have the ability to set up a 3-camera live stream of a band, and that's going to be my next thing I'm working on, is a series of musical performances by local artists, and they'll be recorded here and broadcast on my channel and probably on their channels as well. So that's going to be fantastic. So let's get to the tour. So in 2017 we purchased this 1969 house in Duncan, and we started updating it for 3.5 years. And now it looks like this. We completely redid the inside, completely redid the outside, and of course I built my studio addition there on the right. We covered the front with cedar just to give it this West Coast sort of vibe. We tried to make everything a little bit mid-century modern-ish, and it came out better than I expected. And as you enter, you can see the Edgetone Studios logo that my buddy Colin did up on his vinyl cutter. I painted that on the door. And in the entry, basically you've got a little entry with a coffee bar, tea bar, a little mini fridge, big window that looks out to the front, and those blinds are new. So that's part of the upgrade since the last tour. I've got my vintage synthesizer ads from Keyboard Magazine throughout the space, and in some cases modern ads for keyboards. In this case, my newly acquired Super Gemini synth. I love it so much that I had to buy the Sound on Sound issue that had it on the cover. And I was also able to squeeze in a small bathroom, so there's a little vanity and a toilet and a mirror, and of course a vintage Sequential Circuits synthesizer advertisement, the Prophet line of synthesizers. And this vanity was wild because it was square and I had to cut the edge of it at an angle to get it to fit. But you know, we've got a towel rack and of course the Yamaha DX7 ad on the other wall. And when you look back into the entryway, you'll see these cloth panels on the wall and ceiling. They're all covering up doors that open to various hatches. These ones contain the microphones, and also I have headphones stored in here, so I can just grab the basket and grab whichever headphones I want. And I'll cover all the microphones that I have later on in the video. And on the other side of the closet, I have the data closet, and this holds the router and the Wi-Fi extender for the studio. There's connections to the control room and the tracking room, as well as down to the garage. And then there's also storage for some extra power cables, some boxes with miscellaneous gear. And of course, there's coffee and tea in the drawer below the coffee maker. But the rest of the drawers also contain microphones, as well as the vintage snare for my Premier drum kit and some guitar pedals. And under the sink, I store a soldering iron on a board that I can easily pull out. I've got extra cables there and connectors that I can wire up if I need to. And then the other side houses the XLR 1/4 inch balanced, unbalanced cables, Velcro, business cards, miscellaneous cables, guitar strings, and such. And of course, this room is also wired for headphones and for microphones so that I can use it as an isolation booth. So heading into the control room, things have changed a bit. I've got a new master keyboard controller, which is my Super Gemini. I've got some new instruments. I'll go through those. But the control room's pretty spacious. It's about 18 by 18, although it's closer to 12 feet wide at the front and closer to 20 feet wide at the back. And I've upgraded my lighting at the back with more LED lights so that there's just a better vibe. And of course, I have my 80s wall of synthesizers, starting with my favorite synth of the 80s, the Roland D50. It's one of the earliest synths I ever used. I just love the sounds of it. It can be considered the first virtual analog synth. And now a DX7 2D rather than the original DX7. And to top it off, a DW8000. This is a vintage digital analog hybrid. I've got the RX5 Yamaha drum machine. And in the rack here, I have a controller for the DW8000 that can program it, as well as the Vermona DRM1 modern drum synthesizer. I've done a whole video on how that's my favorite drum machine. And to top that corner off, I've got the Octopad 2, which I picked up secondhand and used to trigger both the Yamaha as well as the Vermona, but it can trigger my other drum machines as well. In the bass corner here, my main player is a Kiloton 4 by G&L with black and maple and Bergantino cabs. I recently was given this Traynor tube amp. It's a Bassmaster, but my primary amp is that orange 4-stroke. And my other synths have to have an Oberheim sound, so the OB6 was the one I got to fill that out. I love the look of it, but I also love the sound of it. And I replaced my Sub 37 with a Moog Matriarch, and I've spent very little time on this so far. I haven't had a lot of time recently to get into the Matriarch. And then I've got the Polyvolver keyboard, which used to belong to Metric. I've done a video on that and how it works. And there's reading material, some synth books, my Geddy Lee's Big Book of Bass signed by Geddy Lee. The side tables have reading material as well, sometimes manuals. I recently picked up this new acoustic guitar. It's a Simon & Patrick, about 2005-ish, beautiful condition. And as I said, I've got the Super Gemini, but now I've supplemented that with a couple of drum machines. And behind them is my fretless Kiloton 5 bass. This is my favorite bass I own. I don't think I'll ever get rid of this bass. I don't play fretless much, but it just sounds and plays fantastic. And yeah, the Super Gemini, I had to get a glamour shot of this beast. It sounds fantastic. It's now my favorite synth. I have a video on exploring it right after I got it, and I've basically set up this area now to be a little jam station for me. So I've got one of these Teenage Engineering KO2 sampler drum machines now, and again purchased a Tempest, and I'm using those two together in conjunction with the Super Gemini to basically jam along to beats. And the Super Gemini has both an expression pedal, dual sustains for the upper lower layers, and the third pedal is a delay hold. So onto my main gear, my PreSonus Studio Live mixer. I use a fader port for automation just because it's a little bit easier to manipulate. And I've got my ATEM video switcher sitting right there. I've got talkback mic. I've got my main mic I use for these videos. And of course my keyboard, mouse, etc. And onto rack gear, I've basically eliminated anything in the 500 series that wasn't a preamp. So now I have two of the Camden 500s. The rest are SSL 6CHs. And to top that off, I've got some new Newton channel from Rupert Neve Designs channel strips. I still rock the 11 rack for guitar tones. I think it sounds fantastic for a 2006 product. Those Rupert Neve Newton channels are silky smooth. I just love them. And now I've got the Drummer monitor controller instead of the old Coleman I had. I'm still rocking a Monster Power Pro 2500 power supply since my first studio. 8 channels of headphones on the Mackie. And then an oversteer mass for analog saturation. The vocoder SVC 350 for vocoding. And then I've got my custom patch bay. On the other side, I've simply got 2 things here. I've got the Warm Audio WA1B compressor, and my Yamaha SBX90 is the only external effects gear I kept. Now, as for the desk, I custom made this desk even before I built the studio. There's my little model I made. It used to have 2 levels, one for a keyboard, one for the controller on top, but then I went to the mixer instead. I built a sidecar as a 19-inch rack, but really built it to be a place to hold my computer, and then built a full-size drawer to store all sorts of little things you might need at your desk. As we head into the tracking room, you'll see that things haven't really changed much in here. I've still got my Korg SV1, but now I've got these wonderful new blinds on the back, and they make shooting in here so much better. I can control the light. I mean, it's great to have the natural light, but controlling the light for video purposes is a really key part of what I'm moving on to now. There's my set of SH101 ads from 3 different months of keyboard in the 80s, the D50 ad. And each of the rooms is controlled by an HVAC system. It's by Dakin. It's got a smart app. It's got these touch-sensitive panels with this weird dial. Now, the dial almost never works properly. Sometimes you're scrolling up and it goes down. But you can set schedules and away times and control the air quality by allowing air to flow when there's no heat or cooling going on. So it keeps the studio at a nice temperature. I've only got one electric guitar, and that's the Reverend Double Agent OG, and I picked this specifically because it was a P90 and a humbucker for multiple tones, also because it was the 20th anniversary and matched up with the year I retired. I've got a Vox AC15 for jamming in the live room, but usually use the 11 rack when recording. The Traynor amp is used as a mains out from the mixing board, and that comes out of 2 of the lines coming into this room. 2 of them go to the entryway for connection into there. I've got 6 headphone connections and then 12 other microphone connections in here, plus RJ45 for networking and for video. And of course, I've got my vintage Premier drum kit. Now, bass-wise, I've got a couple new additions. I've got this Jack Cassidy bass that I got in trade for a microphone. Then my buddy Chris gave me his old acoustic bass. It's a Morgan Monroe, and I put these Labella tape-ons on it, and now it sounds really great. And here's a shot of the tracking room from the other direction. Now, this is a Premier kit out of the UK. It's a 3-ply mahogany with maple rings. I've got a tablet here now so I can control my mixer from the drum kit if I need to while playing drums. Not that I would do that very often. And there's the Premier logo on the kit. Now I've got the original snare as you saw in the drawer, but I use this pork pie percussion snare instead. I love the sound of that. Now my main keyboard in the tracking room is the Korg Stage Vintage SV1 in red and black. It looks wonderful. It sounds great. It's a digital piano. It's a Wurlitzer. It's a Rhodes. It's an organ, and it's other sounds, and it's completely controllable by anybody who knows how to turn knobs. Now on to mics. The first thing up are the M Audio Pulsar small diaphragm condensers. They got a bass roll-off. They got a 10 dB pad, and they've been my primary overhead mics for years. My main kick mic is a Sennheiser E6022. It's the second model. I got this because I hated the sound of this Shure Beta 52 on kick drum. so I look for something else. And of course, the classic SM57, I have 4 of these. I use them on drums primarily, but sometimes guitars. Now for the toms, I use Sennheiser E604s. Don't let anyone tell you that these are only for live drums. They sound great in the studio, and I have 4 of those for my toms. And this is the Heel the Fin, and it was used in the Hunger Games as the announcement mic. It's got a phantom-powered LED light that makes a bunch of noise. It doesn't sound that great, but it looks cool. And the classic Shure Super 55 dynamic super cardioid mic, I bought that because it's my studio logo. I also have a pair of these blue Dragonfly microphones. They're basically a large diaphragm dynamic cardioid mic, but the head rotates, so you can get them positioned in all sorts of places that it's difficult to get a microphone, so I love those. Here's the Audio-Technica AT2020. It's one of my first mics I had. It's an okay mic. And of course the classic Rode NT1A. I recommend this as a first microphone for anybody looking for a cardioid. Next up is another M Audio mic, the Sputnik. Now this is a tube mic, and it comes in this cool chrome finish. It sounds very vintage, and I really like the sound of it. They also have a 10 dB pad right on the mic itself, as well as a bass cutoff, and multiple polar patterns are selectable from the mic rather than from the power supply. Next up is a Rode NT3 cardioid condenser. Got this used at Long & McQuaid. It was a good price, so I haven't used it much. But it did come with a pop filter, windscreen, whatever you want to call it. Next is a Blue Encore 200. Now this is a powered dynamic mic, and it's one of my favorite vocal mics for live performance for myself. Keeping with the Blue family, this is the only ribbon mic I have, and this is the Blue Woodpecker. It's a phantom-powered ribbon mic. It looks wonderful, but it sounds smooth and glassy. It's great. Now, if you don't know about Bee's Knees, the Australian mic manufacturer, you should find out about them. I picked up this Ellie, which is one of their Pro Series mics, and it was my favorite mic until I found this, the Oliver, which is one of their Studio Series, the less expensive mics. And I loved it so much on vocals. It's my go-to mic for vocals that I had to purchase another one. And now I have one of the newer models that comes with a different logo. And these, of course, being tube mics, have to come with a power supply. And once you get them out of the case, you can see that they have multiple polar patterns selectable on the supply, and they're 7-pin cables to the mic and XLR to the mixing board. And when mounted up, these things are just glorious sounding on vocals. They sound great on guitar cabinets as well. And lastly, my most recent Bee's Knees purchase, and this is what will potentially replace my Pulsars as drum overheads, and this is the Lulu small diaphragm tube microphone, and it's supposed to sound like a KM54 vintage mic. So I'm looking forward to trying these on my overheads. Now, besides microphones, I have a few other pieces of utility gear here. First of all, a line splitter that can split XLR signals, and of course a passive DI. Everybody needs one of those. And then finally, a studio guitar interface, which basically lets me send guitar signals over XLR so I can isolate a cab in the entry from the tracking room. And just in case it's ever needed, I picked up one of these Morley hum eliminators that can take the hum out of lines. I haven't had to use it yet, but it's there if I need it. As we leave the tracking room, we end up in the hallway that both leads to the house but also leads to the outside. And there I have some vintage Korg Poly 6 and Mono Poly ads on the wall. Now the hall does act as a bit of an isolation, but also I have my studio plans up on one side. I've got Rush album art on the other side. And as you head down the hall, you get to a back door that leads to the outside. And when the weather's nice, as it is today, when taking a break from music making, you can enjoy the patio. I've recently put down some nice new pavers to the greenhouse and the laundry platform. And that's it. That's Edgetone Studios. I hope you've enjoyed the tour. I'll be coming to you with more videos soon. Now time to relax.